The ocean had no name where she sailed now. Arya Stark stood on the deck of the narrow vessel she'd stolen in Bravos, the wind whipping her dark hair into ropes. The sun was rising behind her, but ahead, the sea was black and endless. She didn't know where she was going, only that no map showed it and no sailor dared follow. She had no master now, no name, no family, though her heart still beat for Winterfell. She had killed the Night King. She had worn many faces. And yet, none of that filled the hollowness inside her chest. Maybe it was why she chased the edge of the world. She wanted something untouched, unwritten, and unknown. Maybe even something that could kill her. The sailors she'd bribed in Lys had whispered of a place beyond Valyria's smoking ruins. "Past the ashen waters," they said, "where monsters don't just live, they rule." She had laughed then. Let them rule. She wasn't afraid of monsters. 3 weeks into the journey, they began to see things. First came the fog that never lifted, even in the blazing sun. Then the sea changed, thicker somehow with a slow current that dragged at the boat like a hungry hand. The compass spun madly. Birds stopped flying overhead. The stars vanished. Arya dreamed strange things every night. A man with golden eyes standing on a throne made of bone. A whisper in a language she didn't know, but understood anyway. "Come home." She didn't mention it to the crew. They were already afraid of her. She had slit a pirate's throat on the 3rd day and dumped him into the sea without blinking. She hadn't needed to explain. Her blade, needle, spoke louder than words. It was on the 34th day that they saw land. It rose from the mist like a clawed hand. Jagged cliffs, dense jungles, rivers glowing red under a green sky. Birds with 4 wings screamed from the trees. The air shimmered with heat and something else, something old, like the smell of tombs. They docked the ship near a broken stone pier. Arya was the first to step off. The ground trembled beneath her boots. "Are we staying, my lady?" asked the youngest sailor, trembling behind her. "I'm not your lady," Arya said. "You can stay or you can turn back." The boy fled. 2 others followed him. The last one, a sellsword with no teeth and dead eyes, stayed behind. He said nothing. She let him stay, for now. They walked inland through vines thick as ropes and trees that bled when cut. Strange statues lined the path, tall, eyeless things with faces carved all over their bodies. Some wept, some laughed. One had Arya's face. She stared at it for a long time. "That's impossible," she muttered. The sellsword said nothing. He didn't even look. By nightfall, they reached a city, or what was left of it. Massive stone towers lay in ruin, cracked open like skulls. But something still moved among them. Shadows too big, eyes too wide. Arya felt cold for the first time in years. Her blade trembled in her hand. Needle had never done that before. She heard the whisper again. "Come home!" The sellsword screamed. She turned just in time to see him dragged into the dark by something, tall and thin and grinning. Arya didn't scream. She stepped forward. "Who are you?" she called. The answer didn't come in words. It came in faces. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They bloomed from the darkness like flowers. Her face, her sister's face, her father's, Jaqen H'ghar's, even the hound. They floated in the air like lanterns, each one whispering her name in 1,000 different voices. "Arya Stark," they said. "No one. Someone. Us." She didn't run. "What is this place?" The faces vanished. All but one. It wasn't hers. It wasn't anyone she recognized. But it was beautiful and terrifying. It had too many eyes, a smile that split down to its chest, and when it spoke, the world shook. "You are in the Hollowlands, where masks were born, and you have brought your own." Arya lifted her blade. "I don't need masks anymore." The thing laughed, 1,000 voices in one. "Then why do you wear one even now?" Arya felt something peel inside her. Not her skin, her soul. She was not ready. But the continent had been waiting. She woke on a bed of stone. Not the deck of her ship, not a jungle floor, not even the ruin where she'd last stood. This place was smooth, carved perfectly into circles, lit by no fire she could see, yet everything glowed. The air tasted like iron and rain. Her skin felt tight, like it had been scrubbed from the inside. Arya sat up. Her blade was gone. She didn't panic. A true fighter doesn't need a weapon to survive. She'd fought with rocks and sticks, with her fists, with poison. She had survived King's Landing, the House of Black and White, the Long Night. But this place, it didn't feel like survival was expected. It felt like judgment. The circular room had no windows, no doors, only the faces. They lined the walls, carved into black marble, hundreds of them. Young, old, man, woman, beast. Some were beautiful, others horrifying. And in the center of the floor, another face, huge, featureless, except for eyes that blinked. Real eyes. Arya stepped back, her heart hammering. "I don't fear death," she whispered. "Then you misunderstand me," the floor said. The voice came from everywhere, male and female, loud and soft, 1,000 tones, yet only one message. "I am not death. I am the one who wears it." Arya clenched her fists. "You're a god, then." The face blinked. "Names are for mortals. But you know mine. Yes, Arya Stark, the girl who killed the Night King, the girl who served the many-faced god, and then walked away." "I didn't walk away," she said coldly. "I finished what I needed. You took our gifts. You killed with them. But you never paid." She stepped forward. "I gave you everything. My identity, my blood, my soul. No. You gave us your body, your name, but you never let go of your will." The walls began to move. Faces turned. Eyes blinked. Mouths opened. "You were never no one. You were always someone. That is your crime. That is your strength." Arya looked around. "What do you want from me? You came here. I came looking for answers. You came to escape peace. You came for violence. You came for a war only your blood could ignite." Arya's jaw clenched. "Then show me the battlefield." A pause. Then the stone split beneath her. She dropped like a stone into the dark, screaming without sound, falling through memories, her mother's last breath, her father's head, the hound's fury, Gendry's kiss, Jaken's smirk, the Night King's death, all flashing past in bursts. She landed in water, warm, thick, not quite water. It clung to her like oil. She surfaced, gasping, and found herself in a city, not ruins, not broken, alive. Massive towers of black stone reached the clouds, bridges spun like spiderwebs between them. People walked the streets, tall, pale, wearing no clothes but tattoos of ink that moved like serpents. One of them turned. He had no mouth. Another turned. She had 3. They all looked at her with something between awe and hunger. She climbed out of the pool. No weapon, no map. No idea if this was real. A voice whispered behind her ear. "You came to the Hollowlands looking for a continent. What you found is the first city, the place where masks were born, where gods were made." She spun around. No one was there, except a child, sitting on a throne of bones. He looked 7 years old, but his eyes were older than time, and in his hands he held needle. "You left this behind," he said, smiling. Arya stared. "What is this place?" The boy tilted his head. "This is where truth lives, and you are going to kill it." Arya narrowed her eyes. "Why me?" "Because you're not like the others. You don't want to rule. You don't want to serve. You just want to cut the lies out of the world." The boy stood and handed her needle. She didn't trust him, but she took it. The metal felt wrong. In her hand. It burned, but not with fire, with memory. Every death, every name, every face. "You are ready," the boy whispered, "but once you begin, the masks will come for you." "What masks?" He pointed up. The sky was no longer a sky. It was a face, huge, eyeless, and smiling. Then it began to peel itself apart. Arya gripped needle tight. This was no longer exploration. This was war. The city bled color as the sky tore open. Arya stood frozen, her fingers white around Needle's hilt. Above her, the colossal face in the sky unraveled like old flesh, revealing layers beneath. Other faces. Hundreds. Thousands. Twisting, overlapping, whispering to each other without sound. Every one of them stared down at her. Some wept, others smiled, but none were still. The boy was gone. The streets emptied in an instant. No scream, no footsteps. 1 second, life buzzed around her. The next, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that waits right before something terrible happens. And then they came. From the shadowed alleys, from beneath the stones, from the folds of the air. They stepped forward in robes of black and bone. The masks. Some had no eyes. Some had too many. Each one moved like a dream, floating more than walking, their feet inches from the ground. Their masks shimmered like mirrors, reflecting not Arya, but who she used to be. One showed her as the girl who watched her father die. Another showed her as the scared child hiding in Harrenhal. A third wore her face when she slit Marentrant's throat. She blinked, and there were 100. "You carry a name," the first said, its voice layered with dozens more. "That alone is a betrayal." Arya didn't answer. She moved into a low stance, breathing slow. Observe, predict, strike. Sirio's voice echoed in her memory. "You were trained to be no one," another said, "but you kept your wolf heart." Arya lifted Needle. "And that's why I'm still alive." She darted forward before they could speak again. The closest mask turned its head, too slow, clink. Needle slid through the neck. But no blood came out, only black smoke. The figure crumbled and the smoke wrapped around her arm like a serpent. It whispered as it slid over her skin. "You killed you. You killed you. You killed you." Arya shook it off and ran. The city twisted as she moved. Streets bent sideways. Doors became mouths. The ground pulsed like a heartbeat, but she didn't stop. The rules here were different, but death still had weight, and so did steel. More masks came. She ducked a swipe from one wearing Cersei's face, rolled under a spear thrown by one, shaped like Sansa, and kicked another that wore her own mother's tearful face. It fell, and Arya froze. She had killed a lot of people, worn many faces, but some ghosts were heavier than others. The face changed as it hit the ground. Not her mother, not even human. A reptilian face, horned and ancient, blinked up at her. From the mask now, it smiled. "You think you know your truth?" it hissed. "You haven't even seen it yet." The ground beneath her cracked. Arya fell again, but this time she landed on stone steps leading down, down, endlessly. She didn't know if she chose to descend or was pulled, but her legs moved on their own. The walls around her began to whisper. Every kill, every lie. Every time she said, "A girl has no name," and meant it a little less. This wasn't memory. This was exposure. The stairs ended in a hall of mirrors, not glass, but obsidian, smooth and swirling. Her reflection appeared in each, except it wasn't always her. One mirror showed her as Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, her crown made of weirwood branches. Another showed her as a faceless assassin, sitting alone in the dark, surrounded by bodies. Another showed her dead, buried in snow, a dire wolf, curled beside her corpse. Each reflection whispered, some begged, some mocked. Arya stepped forward. "What is this place?" "The Temple of True Names," a voice answered. She turned. A woman stood there. Or maybe not a woman, her face changed every second. Old. Young, pale, dark, sometimes beautiful, sometimes monstrous. But her voice remained the same. "You wanted to know what lies beyond the edge of maps," she said. "Here it is." Arya said nothing. "You still think this is a place, a continent, a city, but it's not. This is a wound in the world, where masks are born when truth dies. I came here to find something real. You did. Yourself. And now you'll have to kill her." The mirrors around Arya shattered. Her reflection screamed and melted. One remained. The version of her that had stayed in Braavos, that had let go of Winterfell, that had become truly no one. It stepped out from the glass, holding a blade shaped, just like Needle, only longer, hungrier. It raised the weapon, and Arya Stark, for the first time in her life, was not sure she could win. The twin stepped forward, barefoot on the mirror shards that no longer cut. Her face was Arya's, but smoother, emptier, like it had forgotten how to smile or cry. Her eyes glowed faintly, as if lit from within, and her blade shimmered with shadows instead of steel. Arya raised Needle. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then the other Arya spoke. "You are the lie." Her voice was cold, detached, like someone who had killed emotion long ago. Arya narrowed her eyes. "You're what I would have become if I'd stayed with the faceless men." "Yes. I am the version of you that succeeded. No name, no past, no weakness." Arya's lip curled. "Then why are you still here?" The double tilted her head. "Because something inside you brought us back together. You needed to know." "You failed." "I survived." "You cheated. You held on to your wolf name. You chose vengeance, family, love. That made you powerful, but it also made you corrupt." Arya stepped sideways, circling, boots crunching against dream glass. "I made choices," she said. "They didn't make me weak. They made me real." The other Arya moved too, like a shadow reacting to light, always just out of reach, always in sync. It was like looking at a memory that had learned to fight back. "You murdered truth to preserve identity. You wear your pain like armor, but you never let it go. You are not free. You're possessed by names." Arya lunged. Needle clashed with the shadow blade in a shriek of ice and smoke. Sparks flew. The blow knocked her back, knees skidding. The shadow Arya was faster, stronger. She didn't hesitate. No breath wasted on thought or doubt, just movement. Arya dodged, ducked a strike that would have opened her throat, and spun behind a broken column. "You want me to believe the lie is in being human," Arya called out. "But I've been both human and ghost is worse." The voice followed, calm, echoing. "Emotion is a mask. Your love for your sister, your loyalty to your home, the vengeance you thought made. You righteous, all illusions, all distractions." The next attack came without warning. Arya rolled, barely evading a blade that seemed to bend mid-air. Every strike from the twin chipped more of the ground, and Arya realized this wasn't a test of skill. It was a test of will. She had to believe in herself more than the mask did. Arya dropped Needle. The room froze. The shadow Arya stared. "You surrender?" "No," Arya said. "I remember." She reached to her belt and pulled something else. Not a weapon, not magic. A small piece of cloth, torn, burnt around the edges. Part of a cloak. Sansa's. Old stitching. She'd kept it without thinking, hidden in the lining of her coat since Winterfell. She held it up. "This is truth," she whispered. The mask shuddered. "This is why I left, why I killed, why I didn't stay no one." She stepped forward, unarmed. "You forgot what I never did. I'm not no one. I'm Arya Stark of Winterfell." The mirror Arya screamed. Her form cracked, like a mask breaking. Her skin began to peel, her voice splitting into thousands of whispers. "I was stronger," it hissed. "No," Arya said. "You were empty." The shadow dissolved. Face. Last to go. Needle clattered to the ground. Arya picked it up, hands shaking. The walls pulsed, then split open. Light poured in, warm, golden, unlike anything she'd seen in this cursed place. It was like summer pouring through a grave. From the glow stepped the child again, the god in a boy's body. But this time, he bowed. "You passed the gate of reflection," he said. "You killed the lie that wore your face." Arya looked down. "Then what's next?" He looked up, eyes ancient and sad. "Now you enter the city of faces, where the god with 1,000 mouths waits to feed on your truth." Arya blinked. "I just killed my reflection. What more is there?" The boy's voice dropped into something colder. "That was your past. Now comes your future." She followed him into the light, knowing the hardest part wasn't behind her. It had only just begun. The light faded as quickly as it came. Arya stepped into the city of faces, and her breath caught. She had seen strange things since leaving Westeros, creatures without bones, statues that bled, whispers in the wind, but this was different. This wasn't just a city, it was a graveyard made to look like a temple. Massive towers curved inward like ribs, surrounding a courtyard paved in polished obsidian. The sky above was no longer sky, but a dome of moving skin, faces stitched together, murmuring, blinking, some screaming silently. They shifted constantly, as if trying to break free, and in the center of the courtyard stood a throne, or what passed for one. It was made entirely of bones. Not white and clean, but gray, worn down by centuries. Human, child, beast. Some she didn't recognize. They seemed to move when she looked too long. The god waited on top of it, not a form she could understand. It changed every time her eyes tried to hold it. Man, woman, monster, flame, void, wolf. It wore all faces at once, and none of them felt real. Only the mouth stayed constant, wide, eternal, stitched along its chest and belly like a wound that could speak. The child god beside her whispered, "Do not bow, it smells worship." Arya didn't bow. The thing on the throne tilted its many heads. One of the mouths opened, revealing rows of tongues instead of teeth. "You are late," it said, in a voice made of everything. Her father's whisper, the hound's growl, Jaqen's calm, Sansa's sob. Arya swallowed. "I didn't know. I was expected. You were made for this. I didn't ask to be. And yet, here you are. The girl who could not be tamed. The wolf that left the pack but still howled." Arya gripped Needle. "Say what you want. I'm not afraid of you." The god laughed. The sound cracked the stones under her feet. "You should be. I am not a god of mercy. I feed on certainty, on belief, on names." It leaned forward. Dozens of faces blinked across its skin. "You are Arya Stark. You killed the Night King. You bled for revenge, but you also ran from peace. Tell me, girl, why are you truly here?" Arya hesitated. For the first time since she'd left Westeros, she didn't have an answer that made sense. "To explore," she said. "Lie. To learn something new. Lie." She clenched her teeth. "To see what's beyond the world." "Closer," the god said, "but still a lie." It stood. Shadows rippled around it like water. Its many mouths smiled. You came here because you cannot rest, because something inside you is broken, and you thought maybe if you reached the edge of the world, you could leave that broken part behind. Arya felt her heart tighten. She hated how true it sounded. I came to start again, she said. And now you must end, it replied. The throne cracked. The faces above her began to chant. Arya Stark! Arya Stark! Arya Stark! Each time her name was said, the world shook. Her body vibrated with it. The god extended its arm, not to attack, but to invite. Join me. Wear the truth. Become part of the voice that silences all others. No more pain, no more choice. Just peace. Eternal. She stared, and for a terrifying moment, she wanted to be free of guilt, free of memory, free of the endless battle inside her chest between wolf and ghost. But she remembered. Jon's smile, Gendry's hands, Sansa's tearful laugh, her father's voice in the wind. No, Arya whispered. The faces above screamed. She lifted needle and sliced her own hand, letting blood fall on the black stones. My name is Arya Stark, and I choose to be. The god roared. Reality shattered. A wave of force blasted through the city. The throne exploded. Faces screamed and fell like ash. The child god shielded her, but the blast still tore at her mind, pulling her memories, her name, her soul. And then, silence. When the dust cleared, the god was gone. The throne was rubble. Only Arya stood, bloodied but whole, needle still in hand. The boy approached. You have killed the god with 1,000 mouths. Arya looked down at her, bleeding hand. No, she said. I just refused to join it. The boy smiled, almost sad. Then your punishment is freedom. And the city began to collapse. The hollow lands began to fall apart like a dream unraveling at dawn. The towers groaned and split. The stitched sky unzipped, and the endless faces within it screamed as they were pulled into the void. The ground cracked beneath Arya's feet, revealing bottomless pits that churned like open mouths. Every lie the god had ever devoured was being spat back into the world, and it was tearing the place to pieces. Arya didn't run, not at first. She stood among the ruins of the throne, watching the last pieces of that ancient god scatter into smoke. There was no triumph in her chest, no satisfaction, just a quiet, eerie stillness, the way she'd felt when she killed the Night King, when Cersei died, when Jaqen Hagar let her walk away for the last time. Victory, for Arya Stark, had never felt like joy. Come, the child god said, tugging her arm. This place won't hold. Arya nodded and followed, blood trailing from her palm. Needle was still warm in her grip, humming faintly like it remembered every name it had ever tasted. They passed the broken statues, now screaming instead of weeping. The ground beneath them bled black oil. The air thickened with whispers. You can't leave, one hissed. She belongs to us, another growled. They ran faster. When they reached the edge of the city, the vines that once bled now coiled like serpents, striking at her feet. Trees fell behind them, roots pulling themselves from the ground with claw-like hands. Even the mist seemed alive, reaching, grabbing, whispering, "Stay!" But Arya had already made her choice. She didn't belong here. She never had. They reached the pier, what little remained of it. The boat was gone. Only fragments remained, scattered like the bones in the city. The child god didn't panic. He stepped to the water's edge, raised his hand, and whispered a name. One that hurt Arya's ears to hear. The sea opened. Not parted, not lowered, opened. Like a wound, like the city, like everything in this cursed land. A narrow path of dry black sand stretched out into the horizon. "Follow it," he said. Arya looked down at the path. It didn't look stable. The water rippled on either side like it was breathing. Beneath it, something watched. "You're not coming?" The child shook his head. "I was born from the hollow. I am what was left behind when the first liar told the first truth." Arya stared. "You were never real, were you?" "I was never only real." She wanted to say something else, but the path trembled. "I don't know where it leads," she said. "It doesn't matter." "You do." Arya nodded. "What happens to this place when I go?" "It forgets." "What? Me?" "Itself." She took a breath, stepped onto the black sand, and didn't look back. The path was narrow, too narrow. But she kept walking. The sky around her folded in. Shadows reached out from the waves, muttering fragments of names she didn't recognize. One voice sounded like Rob, another like her mother, another, God's. It sounded like Ned, but when she turned her head, no one was there. Grief twisted in her chest. These were not memories. They were leeches trying to feed on what she still loved. She kept walking, one foot, then the next. Somewhere behind her, the hollow lands screamed as they died. The sky collapsed into itself. The air exploded in a silence louder than thunder, and the last breath of the faceless god fled the world like smoke from a dying fire. And then, water. Real water. Blue. Cold. Alive. She stepped off the black path and into a small inlet surrounded by cliffs. Real ones this time. Stone, moss, wind. The sea was back. A real sea. She collapsed to her knees and touched the ground, like she hadn't touched it in years. Behind her, the path vanished. The hollow closed forever. And Arya Stark was alone again. But she was alive. Different. More herself than ever. She stood slowly. The horizon ahead stretched wide and unknown. Somewhere Westeros waited. Or maybe another land. Maybe something better. Maybe something worse. Didn't matter. She wasn't running anymore. She was walking forward, and she was ready. The wind carried salt and silence. Arya sat on a smooth stone at the edge of the cliff, staring at the ocean that stretched endlessly west. The hollow lands were gone, buried behind a curtain of memory and myth. But something inside her still echoed with their screams. She had left the continent, escaped the City of Faces, killed a god, or at least denied one. But something had followed her out. She felt it at night when she closed her eyes. Not danger, presence, like a piece of the place had lodged itself inside her. She didn't know if it was magic, madness, or just memory, but it was there. She wasn't the same girl who had climbed aboard a stolen ship in Braavos, looking for the edge of the world. She wasn't sure she even knew what she was now. Her hand was healing, but slowly, the cut from the blood oath she'd made. "I am Arya Stark, and I choose to be," was deep, and it hadn't stopped aching since the moment she'd stepped onto the black sand path. It wasn't infected, it wasn't poisoned. But it pulsed with a strange rhythm. A reminder. A scar that whispered. And her dreams were changing. Every night since her return, she dreamed of faces. Not nightmares. Not the kind that made you wake in a sweat, but vivid, quiet dreams of people she'd killed and people she hadn't. Faces she recognized and others she didn't. Sometimes they just looked at her. Sometimes they cried, and sometimes they smiled. Once she saw John in the dream. He didn't speak. He just looked tired. Like he'd been waiting for something. Waiting for her? She didn't know what it meant, but she knew she couldn't stay on this cliff forever. She needed to move. There was no map, no stars to guide her. But her instincts were sharper than any compass. She followed animal paths through the brush, slept near streams, drank rainwater from her cupped hands. For days she traveled inland, unsure of where the sea had deposited her. And then, on the fourth night, she found the village. It wasn't like any village she'd seen before. The buildings were made of pale wood and long bones, no windows, no doors, just cloth flaps and rows of charms, teeth, feathers, small skulls, hanging from every corner. The people were strange, too. Tall, silent, tattooed with spirals down their arms and across their faces. They didn't speak a word when she entered, didn't run, didn't reach for weapons. They just looked at her, like they knew. A woman stepped forward. She wore no paint, no tattoos, just a cloak made from stitched animal skins and a necklace of broken masks. She looked Arya over for a long time, then nodded slowly. "You've walked where no one should," she said, and returned. Arya's grip tightened on Needle. "How do you know that?" The woman smiled, sad, knowing. "Because I did once too." That stopped her cold. "You were in the Hollow Lands?" The woman nodded. "Long before you were born. I made a deal I thought I understood. I came back hollow, but I stitched myself whole again, piece by piece." Arya didn't know what to say. She'd never met anyone else who'd been there. The woman gestured to her scarred hand. "It hurts, doesn't it? It will until the name becomes more than a word again." Arya looked down. "What does that mean?" "It means a name is not just something you say. It's something you live. You don't just call yourself Arya Stark. You prove it. Every day, with every step." Arya's throat tightened. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to say that. The villagers offered her food, strange roots, spiced meats, thick black tea that made her vision swim. She stayed the night, then the next, then one more. Not because she was afraid to move on, but because for once, she didn't feel hunted. Not by people, not by gods, not even by her past. The third night, the woman found her again. "You'll leave soon?" Arya nodded. "There's still more. Out there." "There always is," the woman said. "But before you go, I will give you a truth you earned." Arya leaned in. The woman pointed to the stars, now visible overhead. "That God you denied, it's real. Name isn't death, it's memory. It feeds on what we hide, what we forget. You refused to forget yourself. That is why you lived." Arya stared up at the stars. She hadn't thought about it like that. "I thought I killed it," she said quietly. "You didn't," the woman replied, "but you wounded it, deeply. It will never be the same, and neither will you." Arya stood. She understood now. Not everything needed to be defeated. Some things just needed to be remembered, and she would carry that memory, like Needle, like her name, not as a weapon, but as a promise. The road ahead was not a road at all. It was rough, unmarked terrain, hills blanketed in thick fog, rivers that ran backward in the mornings, trees shaped like questions twisting into the sky. But Arya Stark moved through it with the calm of someone who had already faced the worst thing in the world, herself. The villagers had watched her leave in silence, their eyes filled with something between reverence and sorrow. The woman who'd walked the hollow before her gave her a final warning. "Keep walking, wolf girl, but never run again, not even from peace." Arya didn't answer. She only nodded. She traveled for days, then weeks. She hunted with snares, fished with sharpened sticks, and read the wind like an old friend. Her body healed faster than before, her mind slower. But the dreams never left her, Faces still came. Only now, they waited. They stood in her sleep, watching her from a distance, no longer whispering, no longer reaching, just watching, as if waiting for her to decide what to do with them. Were they memories? Regrets? Or pieces of a power she now carried? She wasn't sure, but she no longer feared them. One night, as she slept beneath a wide oak tree on the edge of a ridge, a voice spoke, not in the dream, but in the waking world. "I've been following you," it said. Arya was on her feet in an instant, needle drawn, eyes sharp. A figure stepped from the trees, tall, robed in dark gray, face covered with a wooden mask shaped like a wolf's skull. Arya didn't blink. "Speak," the voice came low. "You walked the hollow. You survived the god. You killed its voice. That's no small thing." She kept her blade raised. "Who are you?" The mask tilted. "A servant of silence." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Faceless?" "No. Worse," the figure said. "We're what the faceless men became afraid of." She didn't lower her sword. "And what do you want?" The figure stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wild animal. "To warn you. You left the hollow, but it didn't die. It only changed because of you." Arya stayed still. "And that's a bad thing?" "That's an unknown thing, and the world fears what it doesn't name." The wind picked up. The figure reached into their cloak and tossed something to her feet. A mask. It was carved from dark glass, and it had her face. She didn't pick it up. "You're saying they'll come for me?" "They already are. You'll see them soon. Masks without masters. Gods without followers. They'll want what's inside you because you walked out of their temple alive." Arya looked down at the mask, then back at the figure. "I'm not hiding. I know. That's why I came." She finally lowered needle. "What do I do when they find me?" The figure hesitated. "Remember who you were, who you are, and who you refused to become." Arya took a breath. The fog thinned around them. She suddenly understood. "I don't have to wear a face to win." "No," the figure said, stepping back into the dark. "You just have to keep being one." And then he was gone. She stared at the mask. For a moment, it almost tempted her. Not for power, but for simplicity. Being no one was easy. You didn't feel guilt, or grief, or fear. But Arya Stark felt everything, and that was what made her dangerous. She crushed the mask beneath her boot. The wind howled as if in approval. She walked toward the edge of the ridge and looked down. A vast valley stretched below, lit by soft blue moonlight. Villages dotted the hills. Lights flickered. A world, untouched by the wars of Westeros, unknown, unwritten, and waiting. She didn't know what name they'd give her here, or if they'd even care, but she would not hide who she was. She was Arya Stark, not a queen, not a hero, not a god, just a girl with a blade and a name she refused to bury, and that was enough. She walked down the hill, into the next story, and the faces, all of them, past and present, living and dead, watched her go. But none followed, because they finally knew. She belonged to herself now.